So when I was growing up as a 90s kid, I witnessed the echoes of the 70s. It was kind of like I was living in a limbo between the 70s, 90s. Now, I was not ever born in the 70s, never alive during that decade, but there was a giant 70s revival in the 90s, probably because those who had nostalgic childhoods in the 70s came of age and were the tastemakers of the 90s. I mean, as a testimony to that, we have that 70s show, Freaks and Geeks, and there was the movie Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Obviously, Dazed and Confused, which I just watched recently for the first time. And I gotta tell you, because I didn't have any childhood association with it, I missed Dazed and Confused in the 90s. I don't really care for it as much, but maybe I need to watch it again or something. The Smashing Pumpkins music video, 1979. 1979. Cool kids don't have the time. We don't even care. As reckless as we are, we don't know. I love that song actually, and I've listened to that song so many times, and I don't know what the hell he's saying. You know how there's certain songs that you could listen to a million times and I can never get the lyrics? There was this 90s song, and I've always thought the lyrics are like, the funk so rubber. Something out now, the funk so rubber. That's what I thought. He was talking about rubber, the funk rubber. My husband informed me it's called like the Funk Soul Brother. And then that Elton John song, Hold Me Closer, Tony Danza. Now I just realized it's Tiny Dancer. This is how I go through life. I just hear these songs. I never know what these singers are saying. We don't even care. As reckless as we are, we don't know. Editing Teresa is going to re-listen to whatever just came out of her mouth right now, and she's like, yeah, she does sound like Billy Corgan. This is kind of a tangent, but the first time I ever heard Smashing Pumpkins was actually not in the 90s. It was later on in the 2010s with Tonight Tonight. The first thing that came to my head, what kind of voice is this? This is the most horrible voice I ever heard. Tonight, 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 tonight. That's how he sounded like. Who said that this guy could sing? Then after listening to it again, it kind of slowly grew on me. There's like certain voices when you first hear it, you're like, ugh. You hear it again, I kind of dig it. I kind of like it. So that's how I feel about the lead singer of Smashing Pumpkins. He has like a nasal voice, and I have a nasal voice. I've been told by a lot of men that I have a nasal voice, so I feel like we're connected. Time is never time at all. You can never, never leave. Believe in you. Believe. Now, in my childhood home, we moved in the late 80s. As a kid, as I was exploring, I would just see ghosts of the 70s in this home, in the living room, and it's still here now. There is a accent wall, a faux wood panel accent wall, and that was an interior design trend that was popular in the 80s, okay? One day, I noticed that there was a gap in one of the fake wood panels, and I used a ruler to widen this gap. And behind this faux wood wall is some psychedelic 70s wallpaper. We're talking orange, avocado green, like the classic 70s wallpaper. And I could imagine at some point in time, the living room was just covered with green shag carpet. In the closets and in the drawers, it's lined with retro Star Wars shelf paper. Fused onto the ceiling, there are these plant hanger hooks. And I'm thinking the plant hanger hooks are specifically for your macrame plant hangers, because that was also a big thing in the 70s. There was a lot of macrame and there was a lot of wicker. At some point in time, I would like to take out the wooden panel and just expose the 70s wallpaper that covers this accent wall. And then somehow on Facebook Marketplace or something, find a wicker peacock chair. You know that chair featured in all the albums? The Royal Peacock wicker chair, place that next to the 70s wallpaper, and then we have a 70s home reborn. Also lately, I have been, and this is a confession, I have been on Pinterest and I've been looking at specifically 70s kitchen decor. Teresa from 2017 would never dream about even looking at a 70s kitchen, at the colors of orange and that avocado green fridge. But I have to tell you, I have become really sick of millennial gray. So the other day I was rewatching Pulp Fiction, one of my all-time favorite movies. I watched it for the first time when I was 8 years old? And the answer is no, I didn't understand what was happening to Marcellus Wallace. I thought they were like slapping him around, but they were doing other things to him. They were being very uncordial to him, but that's not the point. It was shot on location in LA. LA looked very LA. LA looked quintessentially LA with the apartments, the dingbat apartments, the low buildings and everything. But now I feel like slowly but surely the gentrification of most cities is happening, is reaching a critical boiling point. The defining characteristics of a lot of cities are kind of being phased out to create this homogenous 5/1 look. Like, what's the difference between this city and that city? And all the apartments look the same, shoddily built, high rent prices for what? And I look at my kitchen, I just walk by it every day and I go, ugh. It's just the blandest, most generic looking kitchen. The ugliest tiles, all white, but not like a nice all white. It's like a dirty white. It's kind of like a landlord special white. The hardware of the kitchen cabinets is just blah. That's a long-winded aside to say that I have been looking at some 70s kitchens and some 70s, casserole dishes. And I am currently wearing a ringer tee. When I lived in the 90s, I wore a lot of ringer tees. I had the ringer tee with the happy face, the have a nice day happy face. Another influence from the 70s in the 90s, and I dabbled with some lime green nail polish, and I was into buying platforms with little daisies on them. I was fully entrenched in the 70s, though I didn't know it at the time. So now that you know that I have an ugly kitchen, and we've also established that my current flavor of the week is looking at 70s kitchens, today's video is about a very specific look of the 70s that I'm also very into. You could tell by my ringer shirt that I'm very into it, and it's the 70s summer camp aesthetic. If you want to look like you go to a 70s summer camp, not necessarily as a child, but as, a camp counselor, then this is what you need to wear. I've actually never heard anybody talk about this aesthetic. I don't know if it has been coined by the aesthetic coining gods of TikTok or something. I don't know who coins these aesthetics. If not, then I want to coin it. I want to call it the 70s summer camp aesthetic. I feel like I'm Gretchen Wieners in Mean Girls, where she was trying to make fetch a thing. That is so fetch. Stop it, Gretchen. Stop trying to make fetch a thing. Fetch will never be a thing. So hopefully after you watch this video, the 70s summer camp aesthetic will be a thing. And if not, then I am well acquainted with disappointment. My name is Teresa, and this is the 70s summer camp aesthetic. And it is, if I may say so, it is so fetch. So we're talking about the 70s again, and I say again because way back then, in my second video ever, I did a comprehensive, gargantuan 70s fashion video. It was like a comprehensive survey of all the fashion of the 70s and some 70s history. Like a lot of mistakes in my life, it seems like a good idea at the time. I don't know what I was thinking. Making this long video about 70s fashion history with this giant montage of all the dumpster fires of the 70s, and then realizing it was too long, splitting it into part 1 and part 2. Remember back in the 2010s when the last movie of a franchise was divided into part 1, part 2? The Hunger Games, Mockingjay, part 1. Part 2. Twilight, Breaking Dawn, Part 1, Part 2. Teresa's Chaotic Corner presents the 70s, a decade in fashion, Part 1 and Part 2. What a great idea, Teresa. If you are super into 70s fashion and you want to go and watch that video, then watch it for motivation. If you secretly deep in your heart want to start a YouTube channel but are too afraid to start one. If a dum-dum like me can start a YouTube channel with 0 subscribers and poor production value and a lav mic that she got for $2 at Goodwill, then you can too. Not that my production value is any different, but I've spruced things up. I got a new lav mic and I've kind of learned how to use it. I learned that it sounds better if I hold it as a microphone than actually as a lav mic. And I've spruced up the set. I got these vases. That was a weird position in my hand. I got this $5 lantern from IKEA. I'm a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera. maybe a little too comfortable. In the 70s, there are a lot of famous folk singers, and they all have a similar quality to their voice. And that quality is that they all sound like goats, which is not an insult. It's not a bad thing. I like the sounds of a goat singing man. I am a connoisseur of the musical Jesus Christ Superstar by Andrew Lloyd Webber. My favorite one, my seminal one that I watched in high school was the 2000s one with Jesus in cargo pants. We could talk about that later. We could talk about that in another video because that is just the perfect example of 2000s clothing, 1999, 2000s clothing, the Y2K era. I am also partial to the 70s movie, the 70s Jesus Christ Superstar. When he did the Garden of Gethsemane, his neck would just expand, kind of like a lizard. I want to know, my God, I want to know why. You see, you hear the goat, and then another movie from the 70s, which I love, Harold and Maude. The soundtrack is all Cat Stevens. Trouble, trouble, let me be. I have seen your face and it's too much for me. Trouble, trouble, look away. You hear the goat? Oh, I think it's time. Goat taking a ride down the cosmic train taking a ride on a cosmic train. Cosmic train sounds really 70s. Okay, guys, if in the next clip the lighting is a little darker and I have better hair, it's because I'm doing it the next day. I just spent 20 minutes singing like a goat. Goat singing. Like, what's wrong with you? Says Teresa of the future. For Teresa of the past, get your priorities straight. Since we were talking about the 70s summer camp aesthetic, I would have to confess that I have never been to camp in my life. I've never been to summer camp. And the reason why I never went to camp is that, I don't know, I guess my parents are like, Asians don't do that kind of stuff. It's a long story why I never went to camp, but I actually never really desired to go to camp. I guess I'm an indoor girl. If you took me to Yosemite or Yellowstone, I don't know where people camp, probably a national park, and you dropped me there, I don't know what I would do. I don't know how to set up a tent. I don't really know how to find my direction. I can't even light a match. Like, I'm afraid to light a match. Like, I am 100% a city indoor girl. The thing with fashion looks and aesthetics, it gives you the fantasy of being that thing when you have not been that thing. It's kind of like with ballet corps. Like, I've never been a ballerina. Why can't you just dress like one? So in searching for inspiration for this video, I discovered this clothing company, a modern clothing company. I found them on Pinterest, and I went to their website, and they have these lookbooks that are all 70s summer camp inspired, but their look perfectly encapsulates this nostalgic throwback, this romanticized throwback to the 70s summer camp aesthetic. And by the way, this is not sponsored. Ain't nobody's gonna sponsor somebody that just starts singing like a goat. The 70s had a cool look, didn't it? Especially in photography. So whether I'm looking at photos that somebody else has uploaded online, or one of my favorite things to do is just kind of look at photos, is street photography of New York City from the 70s, like the entire Taxi Driver cinematography look. And it's definitely a period that can't be replicated nowadays. Recently, I've embarked on this epic project of scanning old family photos, and I have photos that my parents took from the 70s, and it just has this muted sepia filter. And I think it has to do with the film that was in circulation at the time, the chemical composition of the film, and then how it ages. Like, you could just take a photo of banal everyday things, and it has that cool 70s look. I would dare say that it's very fetch. Now, for the 70s summer camp look, I am mostly focusing on women's attire, but the same could be applied like paper dolls to a man's attire. Because when you think about the 70s body type, and this is what I've noticed watching a variety of 70s films, looking at magazine ads, photos, is that everybody was very svelte. svelte, very thin. I guess the body type was long and willowy. Nobody really had any curves whatsoever. Okay, I'm seeing this connection here of why the 70s was also very popular with the 90s, because they shared the same ideal body type, and that body type is svelte, slender. In 90s, you had 90s thinness, but in the 70s, people were also very thin, very long-limbed. When I see people in the 70s wear these bell bottoms, their legs go on for miles. They're wearing bandeau tops and they have like very tiny little waists, maybe for a variety of reasons. Because of the economic downturn, maybe food was expensive and people just didn't eat that much, or maybe food was just a lot better 50 years ago. Like they had natural products, natural ingredients, whereas like nowadays food is probably stuffed with a lot of artificial chemicals and preservatives. No doubt 90s kids were not served well with all the 90s junk food, Squeeze-Its and Lunchables and Gushers. And then people, I guess they just engaged in more physical activities. They hitchhiked. They walked. They went outside. Kids played outside. There was no phone to stare at for hours on end. And if you wanted to watch TV, of course there was TV, but there was not much on TVs. I mean, you went outside and then you just, you leapt around like in the age of Aquarius. You burned a lot of calories. Everybody just seemed svelte, long and willowy. So like paper dolls, you take the outfit from the woman and then you place it on the man. You add a mustache, you add some more body hair, chest hair. Yeah, basically have the same thing. So what do we have here? We have a ringer tee, but I can only speak of the 90s, which was a fever dream, a nostalgic fever dream of the 70s. There was a huge ringer tee explosion, especially around 1996, 1997. I did a lot of ringer tee shopping at Target, in the clearance section of Target. We had daisies. We had the have a nice day happy face, lots of stripes. So in addition to your ringer tees, everybody had these teeny tiny eeny weeny running shorts with the white piping. Short shorts was definitely a running trend in casual 70s fashion. You see it on basketball players, you see it on runners, you see people in casual everyday wear. Then you add these knee-length retro striped tube socks, and you add sneakers similar to the Nike Cortez. I don't even know what these are called. Right now, I think they're called retro sneakers. They don't have to be from Nike, but just shoes shaped like this, sweatbands for your head and your arms. And then I basically described a majority of the characters in a Wes Anderson movie. And then if you want to go an extra step further, add some friendship bracelets, add some Birkenstocks. When I think of Birkenstocks, I think of that one character in the Charlie Brown gang, Peppermint Patty, I think her name was. For an extra touch of coolness, I would add some aviator glasses, not sunglasses, but just aviator glasses with a tinted lens, like a tinted yellow lens. And now we're veering into Napoleon Dynamite territory. You know, the ironic thing is when Napoleon Dynamite came out many, many years ago, his entire look was kind of considered a joke because it was the look of the uncool kid at school. Kind of a scrawny kid with a perm, a sweatband, and big glasses. Recently, I watched the mini documentary about somebody trying to book a modeling job, and the modeling agency specifically underlines that the look they were going for, they wanted models that look like Napoleon Dynamite, whether they be male models or female models, Napoleon Dynamite all around. So that just goes to show, looks rise and they fall, and you might be considered a dweeb. 20 years ago, you're a diamond in the rough. Now your look is in. So the 70s summer camp look for girls, for women, it's really a tomboy look. Baseball tees, ringer tees, worn-in sneakers. One thing I really love about the 70s is everybody just seemed carefree. Right? If you look back at fashion from prior decades, let me take the 50s, for example. Everybody just seemed a little uncomfortable. They were very buttoned up. Women wore these girdles, pointy bras. Everybody had their hair, it's like flat on top and then curled all around. That hairstyle kind of made everybody look 20 years older than they were. Like if you look at a 50s yearbook, and I have looked at a lot of 50s yearbook, both online and in estate sales. I just busted open somebody's 50s yearbook. Everybody here looked like they were 40 years old. They were 15 going on 40. James Dean, for instance, I don't believe he's 24 for a minute. If you look at Rebel Without a Cause, he was 24 playing 16. He looked like he was going on 44. Of course, you had your Farrah Fawcett curtain hair. You probably had some crimping and teasing if you're going for the disco Studio 54 look. But for the most part, I see people with their natural hair. If you had straight hair, let it be. Get a middle part. If you have naturally curly hair, just let it be. Be a natural woman. You also had the Dorothy Hamill. Dorothy Hamill was an ice skater. It was a bob that I see on both women and little boys. Men had their natural curly hair grown out. They had long hair. Perhaps they had ponytails. Definitely a lot of mustaches. They just let their chest hair just sprout out. I see a lot of photos of men with like a low tank top and then the chest hair just growing wild. And it's a look. And I would say this is how my tastes have changed throughout the years, because when I was younger, I was also really into fashion history as well. But in my high school days, I really despised anything related to the 70s. The orange and avocado green and brown and yellow color palette. I didn't care for the mustache. I didn't care for bell bottoms, any of it. I really liked the buttoned up 50s. I thought it was more glamorous. All the guys had very neat gelled hair. I feel like the parents of like boomers get a haircut. Yeah, hippie. But now I've evolved and I prefer the 70s over the 50s. You know, the 70s camp aesthetic really celebrates youth, really celebrates a nostalgic throwback to Americana. When kids went to camp and they played outside, it's just a slice of life that perhaps does not exist nowadays. As somebody who has never in her life gone to camp, what do I know about camp? I can only speculate. So if you've been to camp in the 70s or 80s, 90s, let me know what you did there. I just speculate. There was a lot of swimming going on. There was some hiking, like some trail hiking. Maybe you made a campfire. They taught you how to rub two sticks together and blow. Were there potato sack races? Because for some reason I have this image of like a potato sack triathlon. There's the 3-legged race, then you move on to potato sack races, then you do some archery. There's definitely, I think you guys did archery. At night, you would bring it in with scary stories by the campfire. You roast your marshmallows in the same campfire that you learned to build. Please tell me you learned to build a campfire. And your camp counselor would have a guitar. You would all sing Kumbaya. He would lead you into a group singing. Now, once your camp counselor is done with Kumbaya, people start to drift off to bed. I imagine things get a little bit more interesting. That's when the party really starts, and then he starts busting out that folk song that he really wants to sing, and he'll start sounding like a goat. Don't be shy, just let your feelings roll on by. Just lift your head and let your feelings out instead. Don't be shy, here's the goat. On by, on by, on by, on by, on by, on by. I'm a goat. I'm Billy Goat Gruff.